Hi, everyone. Just waiting on everyone getting in here. All right. Appreciate everyone for joining us. We'll give it another minute or so before we jump into today's presentation. And Laura, if you could manage that lobby for us, that'd be awesome. All righty. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Gareth Young. I'm the founder and chief architect of Leva Cloud. We're a Microsoft security and compliance focused partner. Work closely with a lot of the folks from the education team over at Microsoft. And today we're going to be talking about Defender XDR and some other capabilities that come as part of the A5 suite. Got a few other members of the team on here today. Saman, would you like to introduce yourself to everyone here? And looks like we've got Mark and Devon as well. Everyone, don't be shy, say hello.
Absolutely. Thank you, Gareth. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Saman Satyan. I'm a security technical specialist. My focus areas are Microsoft Security Compliance and Identity Solutions. Nice to meet everyone and looking forward to have a great presentation today.
Hey, and I'll go next. Hey everyone, Davon Adams here. Good afternoon. I am a security specialist here with Microsoft. So that's anything focused around cybersecurity, data governance, data compliance, privacy, and risk management, and really helping customers map that back to their roadmap strategy from a zero trust perspective and aligning to Microsoft solutions that can benefit your business. Look forward to the webinar today, and thanks for joining.
All right. Let's jump in. So I like to start with a kind of frame of reference. And ransomware is that frame of reference today because, you know, across all of our education customers and honestly in other verticals as well, we often see two things happen really quickly when they're getting targeted. 99% of the time, it starts with some sort of threat vector like a phishing email or something like that. And as soon as a threat actor gets some sort of foothold, they immediately pivot into some sort of ransomware type attack. Now, you know, what actually is ransomware? So it's a malicious software that encrypts files and systems. And, you know, you lose access to your data, and then the threat actor demands some sort of ransom, which is typically cryptocurrency. And if you pay them that cryptocurrency, then they'll give you the decryption key. You know, we're sort of in this world now where this stuff has really turned into organized crime. You know, you can go out to the dark web and hire a company, and I say that with air quotes, that will do ransomware as a service for you, and they take a cut of it. So it's so profitable that they actually want you to pay the cryptocurrency so they can actually give you the decryption key because it's good business for them from a reputation standpoint, as insane as that sounds. And you know, a lot of times what happens now is the threat actors will exfiltrate data and then threaten to sell it or leak it if the ransom's not paid. Now, CISA does recommend against paying ransoms and focus instead on, you know, prevention, proactive security like zero trust, strong cybersecurity practices. And you know, we're going to kind of explore throughout this webinar how you can implement capabilities to proactively secure your organization against these different type of threats. Now, if we were to sort of just look at the anatomy of how a ransomware attack takes place, these threat actors, they'll do a lot of intelligence gathering up front before they do anything. And, you know, a lot of the time I've seen one that was actually quite memorable that happened recently that we helped with. The threat actors had been scanning ports on the customer's external network. They'd found a port that was open that allowed them to do queries against a domain controller via an ADFS server. And from that, they were basically doing enumeration where they were just looking up literally millions of usernames. We were able to see that from the Defender tools as they were alerting on the activity. And they got so many correct guesses, if you will, on the usernames, and they actually then took that information to start trying to go after the users that they had identified through phishing emails and things like that. And in this particular case, this was a customer that was basically trying to secure their environment. Like, they're very early adopter of the tools. They were still trying to get things in place. We were helping them. And, step 3 on here, you can see is the lateral movement and privilege escalation. So they had a user who got compromised, which we later found to be from this enumeration where they figured out who they were. They got them through a phishing email, and then were able to actually use their account to then access an accounting system. So that's, that lateral movement escalation of privilege on the accounting system. And at that point, they tried to deploy a ransomware payload, but fortunately, we were far enough along with the Defender deployment where it just kind of smacked it on the head, which was great. And we were able to then take some additional steps to stop anything else from happening. But like I say, typically what will happen is they'll exfiltrate the data, so they have a copy of it. They'll do the encryption, and then they'll, ask for the ransom, and generally extort you by saying, if you're like, listen, I'm not paying anything, I've got a backup. They don't care, because they'll threaten to leak your data or identify people that are within that data set to go and contact and also try and blackmail. It's crazy. So having, a robust plan around this stuff is definitely needed. And as much as we can do proactively to stop you getting to that place, the better, honestly. So a quick look at Microsoft 365 A5. That's the security suite, if you will, security and compliance suite that you can add on to your licensing or upgrade to. There's a lot of capabilities in here that you can see listed, and there's even some stuff that's not just security and compliance focused. Like, you can see some extra pieces around Power BI and Teams. As we go through the next section of this webinar together, we're going to explore, how these capabilities come together to provide, a really robust solution for protecting against ransomware. Now, it all starts with zero trust, which is probably a buzzword that you've heard, 1,000 times now from a whole bunch of different people out there in the industry. But let's understand what it is. So, for the last 20 years plus, we've been following what's known as the perimeter security model, where you put all of your stuff on the internal network, wrap the firewall around it, and declare it to be secure. But we're sort of in an age now where that network perimeter we built to protect everything has very much eroded, because we've got different SaaS applications that are out there that, our students, our faculty, and our staff are using. We've got different flavors of devices, whether it's mobile devices or, Macs or you name it, that they're collaborating on and saving data on. And, different vendors and, other external organizations that they're collaborating with in a, multitude of different ways. All of that stuff you can't really secure with a network perimeter anymore. And the industry recognized that. That's why they developed this model called zero trust, where instead of the network perimeter being our control point, identity is instead. So everything to do with zero trust pivots off of identity. And, when we look at this framework here in front of us, this is Microsoft's implementation of zero trust. On the left-hand side, we've got the identities and endpoints. These are what we consider the foundational pillars of zero trust. If you don't get that stuff right, first of all, then you're going to be just playing whack-a-mole with security incidents and alerts until you do, essentially. We've gone into a lot of organizations where they've tried to tackle some of these areas on the right-hand side first, and maybe only loosely done some work on the foundational pieces, and they're wondering why they're constantly chasing users that have been compromised and endpoints with malware. Now, Microsoft's security tools that you get as part of that A5 licensing SKU are actually aligned to these different pillars. So this stuff is designed with a zero trust methodology in mind. It's also modular in the sense that, you can maybe start off with identities, do endpoints a little bit after, because maybe you've got a third-party tool that you're waiting on the contract expiring on, and you can kind of tackle it that way. This stuff's a journey. You can't do it all overnight, but yeah, definitely got to focus on the foundational stuff. Once you have the foundations in place, you really need to focus on getting visibility across all the alerts and things. So maybe that's where a tool like Microsoft Sentinel might come in, which is their SIM product that gives you this kind of bird's eye view across all of your infrastructure, Microsoft and otherwise. And as you're starting to go along the journey and getting the foundational pieces in place around conditional access and Entra and Defender and Intune, that's when you can start to look at some of the data security components and protecting things in the cloud, different applications you're using. So it's a lot, and we're going to explore it as we go through this. And yeah, part of what we do partnering with Microsoft is helping organizations like yours to go on this journey through our expert support services, so we can support you guys as you figure this stuff out and find a path through it. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about a product that has had a recent rename. Instead of being called Microsoft 365 Defender, it's now called Microsoft Defender XDR. And essentially, that is the umbrella product for everything with the word Defender in it. Now, what's really special about it is the XDR component. So in the previous view, we saw how these products were aligned with the different pillars of Zero Trust, if we're going to give them their proper name. XDR, or Extended Detection and Response, is a capability that gives you, a single dashboard inside of security.microsoft.com or defender.microsoft.com. And it also looks at the things, the alerts that are coming out of these different tools, and it actually joins the dots between them. So you'll see a security incident that's occurred that might have alerts within it from multiple of these tools, because Defender's done the hard work of cutting through the noise and surfacing to you, hey, this is the stuff that's all related. So in the old world of security, 10 years ago plus, the best practice was buy tools from multiple vendors, based on who's doing really well in the marketplace. So that does not scale, because you end up in a situation where you're spinning around between 5 different dashboards and not really knowing what's going on between them. The new best practices that you can go out and read about from Gartner and Forrester are investing in a best of breed security platform. And that's exactly what you're getting with the Defender XDR suite. Microsoft spent $20 billion on this stuff over the last 5 years, and it really shows. It's incredible, some of the stuff that you can do with these tools. So let's sort of dig in and understand some of the key capabilities and some of my favorite capabilities across this suite of capabilities. So starting off, Threat Analytics is a really cool little tool that you'll find inside of your Defender dashboard. Microsoft's research teams, they're out there working round the clock to identify different threats on behalf of all Microsoft customers. And essentially, if they find things that are notable, they'll put a report into this dashboard about it. You can go and view that report. You can subscribe and get alerts for when new ones are released. And it's going to give you like a summary of the threat or the threat actor or the threat group. It's going to give you a long form report for your security operations folks to read. It's going to tell you if you're exposed to it, if you've been impacted by it, and also what you can proactively do to protect yourself about it. So, going back to that proactive protection from a ransomware perspective, this is where it can begin in some cases. So that's a great tool to take a look at in there. Another part of what you get as part of that A5 licensing is Microsoft Defender for Office 365. So this is way more than just an email protection tool. This is what I would term a productivity security platform. Not only does it have the capabilities to detect and prevent threats that come in through email, also Teams messages, documents, gives you the ability to go deep and investigate and hunt down different threats if you've had reports coming in of, malicious emails to multiple users, that kind of thing. but it's got an awareness and training component to it as well. Think of it as like Microsoft's equivalent to like a KnowBe4, for example. They've put a lot of time and effort into it, and it's actually really, really robust. We'll see a little bit of it here in a minute. And all of this capability, comes together as a full-on sort of productivity protection that's completely integrated. It's in all of the Office tools out of the box. There's nothing to install. It's just there. You only have to turn it on and configure it. Now, to kind of give you an understanding of how some of it works, so starting off with the sort of prevention side of the tool, specifically the email and document and Teams type protections that are in there. So Defender for Office has a multi-layered filtering stack within it. And, the idea is we want to stop threats before they get anywhere near the user's screen. The first line of defense in here is the edge protection and the sender intelligence. Essentially, these two layers stop the email from even getting anywhere near the mailbox, because sometimes they'll just get dropped right on the edge. But essentially, we want to verify that the sender is who they actually say they are, and that there's nothing untoward there, like spoofing or spam or anything like that. It'll also provide sort of advanced protections against things like business email compromise, and the impersonation side of it is actually quite big. We've seen quite a lot of that recently, where threat actors pretending to be someone in the organization, asking for gift cards to pay someone or whatever. And this tool, you can put your most important people in it so it understands who they are, the ones that are likely to be impersonated, and it will sort of apply extra scrutiny to them. It's really, really powerful. And with this stuff as well, it's built off of a shared sort of threat intelligence database, where if something happens on the other side of the world, the system learns from it, and all of that's shared between every environment. So the more it's attacked, the stronger it gets, honestly. The content filtering layer, it takes a deeper look at the contents of the message. It'll look for, links and files and any sort of suspicious things in the body of the email. And then the real party piece for this, for me, honestly, is even after it's been delivered, it keeps looking every time the message, well, just with the message being there in the inbox, and then anytime the user clicks on it. Because what you sometimes find is a threat actor will actually send out emails where the links inside of it are completely benign, and they only weaponize it after it's been delivered. So that's where some of Defender's 0-hour auto purge capabilities, or ZAP as it's called, come into play to get things after the fact. So yeah, super powerful, and you don't need to do anything other than turn it on, essentially. It also has a campaign view, where if you're being targeted as part of an actual intensive campaign, it'll give you a view to show you all the messages that were part of that campaign, geographically where they came from, and it'll give you sort of insights into whether any of your users clicked into them. So really, really robust capabilities in there. Now, another thing that's quite nice in here is priority account protection. Basically, it helps you keep track of the users in the organization who might be, high visibility or the most targeted. And this is built off the concept of tags. So out of the box, it's going to essentially make all of your global administrators priority accounts. But you can go in and you can create your own tags, or you can add users to the existing tags. And essentially, this will be surfaced throughout the product, so that when you're investigating an incident, it's going to catch your eye immediately, and you'll know that you need to prioritize the one that's got your tags or your priority accounts in it. Also inside of this Defender for Office is the Explorer, where your priority tags would actually surface. And this is part of Defender for Office, where you can do really deep analysis into the different emails that are coming through that might be malicious or otherwise. And the thing that's real nice about it is you can do bulk removal of things. So on the little screenshot here, we're about to bulk delete a series of emails. So to give you a real world example of where I last used this, I was working with a university, I believe they were in Missouri, and they were getting hit by a phishing attack from another university who had been compromised. And, it was getting through because it was all legitimate email addresses, but then, the system saw the volume and users started to report them. So they were getting caught as fish. Now, what we had to do when we sort of figured out what was going on was we came in here and we were able to bulk delete 1,600 messages within a few clicks, quickly getting them out of the inboxes so that, they didn't pose any further threat. So this thing's great. You don't need to go trawling around inside PowerShell anymore or, trying to do things in the Exchange admin console. Really great efficiencies from this piece. Now, I mentioned the awareness and training side of things. Technology really only is part of the puzzle. Your users are your human firewall, as corny as that sounds at the end of the day. And this attack simulation training, as it's called, is super robust. They've got multiple languages in there for the training side of it. You can deliver things based on the time zone for those of you that might have, international students and that kind of thing, or, folks in different regions. And one thing that's really cool is it has this rate of expected compromise, if you will, which is based off of how a particular simulation is done at a global level. And that way you've kind of got a baseline to know if you're doing better or worse than expected, sort of thing. You can schedule out these different trainings, and it even lets you send out just the training videos if you wanted to curate like an awareness course, separate to the attack simulation fishes. So it gives you a lot of different options, and has really, good reporting in it because it's obviously integrated to Entra as well. So super robust tool. Microsoft spent a lot of time on this over the last year or so. Now let's talk a little bit about one of my favorites, Microsoft Defender for Endpoint. This is way more than just an antivirus. The first thing that kind of surprises a lot of people with Defender for Endpoint is that it's actually multi-platform. Windows, Mac, virtual infrastructure, mobile devices. This is starting to get quite popular because it can basically stop SMS and QR phishing attacks. It scans the links when a user taps on it, essentially. And network equipment as well. The network side of it will actually show you vulnerabilities across all your switch stack. So I turned this on for a customer recently and was able to quickly show them that they had Cisco iOS out there on the network that had vulnerabilities in it, and also SNMP vulnerabilities as well, because they were using an insecure version of it. And they would have had absolutely no idea, without having this turned on, because they just had zero visibility into that. Speaking of vulnerability management, this comes included in your A5. You can add on to it to get extra capabilities, but you get a ton that's already included in there. And the really nice thing with the vulnerability management in Defender is if you are still under contract for another EDR that you need to wait until that expires before you can move fully to Defender, you can take advantage of this straight away, because Defender goes into a passive mode when you put it alongside other products, and you can take advantage of all the vulnerability management goodness. I mean, it's actually really cool because it doesn't just tell you about Windows patches. This is going to tell you about the configuration of the operating system itself to tell you if it's hardened enough. It's going to look at the firmware level to tell you if there's firmware updates that you're needing because you're maybe exposed in that area. It'll look at third-party applications, and again, completely cross-platform. So whether it's the switchgear, the iPhones, or the Macs, all of that information is going to be surfaced into here. And some of you might even have Linux use cases in your organizations. It's got you covered on those as well. And it's basically real time. It's going all the time. And it will give you recommendations based on your environment. So it's looking at all the signals that are coming in, and it's going to give you like a list that is prioritized based on what would be most impactful to fix first. So you're not just going to end up with a whole list of CVEs and no idea where to start. So this is awesome, honestly. Now, looking back at some of the other protection features of Defender, Defender, you get this incredibly robust core antivirus solution, but it does more than that. So there's these things called attack surface reduction rules, which basically extend the protections of Defender deep into the Windows operating system. So this is like a specific feature for Windows because it's so highly targeted. And it'll do things like stop the Office apps from creating child processes. So we've seen, macro and other attacks targeted at Office to have it spawn off different processes on a system that are malicious. This completely stops that. It has things in there to stop credential stealing from the local Windows subsystem. So every single pen test that I ever see done, they always go on and try and scrape credentials from the Windows credential store. And if you don't have that turned on in this attack surface reduction rule, then they're likely going to be able to do it. And, if that's what the pen testers are doing, that's what the threat actors are doing. And I would say, most importantly, there's a few of the rules that are in here that are like kind of specific to ransomware protection, just with the way that they work. And we have 100% turned these on for customers. We turn it on for all customers actually, but we've seen it stop ransomware. So if you're doing Defender, don't overlook these. They are that good. Now, other things that are in there that you might not be aware of. So Defender for Endpoint has this network protection component. And, Microsoft's threat intelligence is feeding this tool, and it actually, looks for malicious IPs and domains. If a system tries to reach out to any malicious IP or domain, it will just block it. It doesn't matter if it's a trusted process or otherwise, it will just completely block it. In addition to that, you can add your own domains and IPs that you might have, got through a threat intelligence feed or something else that you want blocked. Now, separate to that, and I don't think I have a slide for it here, there is also web content filtering inside of Defender, which I guess kind of, in a sense, leverages some of this capability too. You can do category-based filtering to, stop them from users from accessing categories that you might not want them to, like gambling or whatever, for example. And then one nice sort of auxiliary part of this as well. So there's a tool that we'll talk about in a few slides' time called Defender for Cloud Apps. And essentially, it, through Defender, looks at the different cloud applications that a user is accessing on their PC. And let's say that you guys are in a, maybe you're a public sector EDU and your state's told you that you're not allowed to let people access TikTok. You could go into Defender for Cloud Apps, block TikTok over there, tag it as unsanctioned essentially, and then every single PC will just block that through this network protection feature. So yeah, it's great, really powerful, and at the core of it, in the purest sense, if you've got a system that's been compromised and it's got something on it that's trying to reach out to a botnet or a ransomware network, like for command and control, this is going to block it. So next generation protection, one of the things I get asked about Defender is, hey, all this stuff you're telling me is awesome, but that sounds like a lot of load on the system. We've got some older computers out there. Are they not going to suffer? And to be honest, the answer is no. The back end of this, the next generation protection, is completely backed by the Microsoft Security Cloud. So Defender will do a lot of stuff locally, but for example, if it sees some files that it doesn't like the look of, and it can't kind of quickly make a decision locally on the system, it'll upload that file to a sandbox in the cloud, and it'll actually detonate it and then make a decision on whether it's going to block it from launching. And all that, would be a lot of processing power locally. But yeah, up in the security cloud, they've got you covered and backed up with that stuff. Same with like new things that are maybe discovered. It's the same sort of deal. It goes into that security cloud, it gets analyzed, maybe it's blocked on your system, and then the threat intelligence is shared with every single Defender tenant in the world. It's wild. And from a behavioral perspective, malware these days is not just someone downloads a file, the file's got something nasty in it, and the antivirus looks at it, maybe tries to compare a file hash to a database and decides that it's not good and quarantines it. Malware these days is designed to evade detection, and in some cases, it might be legitimate processes that have been compromised, or PowerShell that's trying to run in a way that's obfuscated to hide what it's doing. Defender's looking for all that stuff, and it'll take action against it. And if you let it, it'll actually just do it for you automatically to get ahead of the threat, to give your security team a chance to actually understand what's going on and take further action. It's almost kind of like your own little virtual tier 1 SOC person that's working away for you 24/7 inside of here. So really good capabilities. Definitely suggest turning on the automated stuff for your workstations. I do have some customers that like dial it back a click on the servers while they see how it's going to respond, but for all the workstation use cases, I highly recommend just having it turned on, full protection. Now, since ransomware was our sort of ground anchor for today's conversation, I want to call out this feature in Defender called tamper protection. So anytime a ransomware threat actor gets on a system, they try and disable the endpoint protection or otherwise modify it. I have been in environments in the past where this feature called tamper protection has been turned off. So best practice is to make sure this is on, because what it'll actually do is it'll stop anyone from being able to mess around with Defender on the system. You can't disable it. You can't change registry keys related to it. This protects from all of that. So definitely make sure you have this turned on if you're using Defender for Endpoint. Now, we saw in the beginning Microsoft Zero Trust and how this is all one big platform. And as such, there's a lot of integration between these different tools, not just on the security side, but on the device management side as well. So Microsoft Intune is like hands down the best way to manage Defender across all of your systems. There's really great integration to where, starting with vulnerability management. Let's say, really simple use case, you see something in there that needs updated. You can request remediation from inside of Defender, and it actually puts it into a security tasks dashboard inside of Intune. And then, someone that's on the endpoint team can pick that up, understand what needs done and why, and then action it. So this is really a good way to sort of break down that silo that we've traditionally seen between security and endpoint teams when they're in an organization where they are kind of separate. Other really cool things in here as well. So we're going to deploy Defender from Intune most of the time because we want to take advantage of all the other modern management capabilities that are in there as well. But sometimes you might have use cases where there's systems that can't onboard to Intune. Maybe it's a server, or maybe it's a special use case system. Well, the good news is inside of Intune, we're going to define all of our endpoint security client settings. So for example, antivirus scan schedules, attack surface reduction rules, that kind of thing. They'll get applied through Intune to the Intune managed devices, but if you turn on a thing called security configuration management, you can actually use Intune to manage the endpoint security and client antivirus settings on your Windows servers, your domain controllers, and all those different special use devices that for whatever reason can't be brought into Intune. And it's awesome because like in the past, we've had to leverage group policy to do servers and then, workstations in Intune, and you just end up with this disconnect because you're having to go to multiple places to manage things. But now you can do it all from Intune. And for those devices that can't be enrolled, it pushes the settings backwards through the Defender for Endpoint service, through the Defender for Endpoint sensor, onto the server or whatever it is. So yeah, highly recommend checking that out as part of this as well if you're going to leverage it. Now, I mentioned Defender for Defender for Endpoint. It has a large API ecosystem behind it. Essentially, different providers can build on top of it. Like we have security services that we offer ongoing 24/7. to monitor Defender for endpoint and identities. Or, you know, maybe you've got a ServiceNow type capability where you want to take advantage of, you know, opening cases and things like that when certain things happen inside of Defender. Or beyond that too, you know, maybe you want custom reports to show leadership and other stakeholders exactly what's going on at a given time within the security ecosystem. And then most importantly as well, automation. So in a lot of EDUs, they have smaller teams that are wearing a lot of hats. I mean, it depends on the size, but, you know, especially in our sort of K-12s and things like that, they do tend to be smaller. You know, some of our universities and colleges do have larger teams, but across the board, I would say automation is one of the things that can really empower a security team. And through the capabilities you get inside of Microsoft Sentinel and Logic Apps, which are kind of like this automation capability where you can define a workflow that says, hey, if we see a system that gets a piece of malware on it, I want you to automatically quarantine it and download an investigation package from it, send a ticket into our ticketing system, and email these 3 people and send someone a Teams message. Like all this kind of stuff you can build out in automated playbooks, and it's all powered by the API ecosystem. So yeah, a lot of great extensibility in there. You know, we're in an era of Microsoft now where they're not just trying to protect only Microsoft stuff and force you to only use things inside of the Microsoft ecosystem. They've opened it up to where they're your security vendor, regardless of where the data is stored and what devices you're using and what clouds you've got applications in. And that's what this really enables. Now, I mentioned Defender for cloud apps earlier. So this is technically what you would call a cloud access service broker, or CASB. And essentially, I would describe it as being threat protection for your cloud SaaS applications at the service level. So I mentioned that it's going to see all of the different apps that users are accessing and give you the ability to tag them as unsanctioned, to block them, or just monitor them to see what sort of usage they're getting. It's going to connect into different cloud ecosystems that you might be using, like Office 365, to look for malware across OneDrive and SharePoint inside of the cloud. You know, you might connect it into ServiceNow to get some security posture management recommendations about the way it's set up. There's a lot of different things you can do with it there. Some of the advanced capabilities, though, you know, we've got some colleges that are starting to explore document classification and labeling inside of Microsoft Purview as a way to help secure data that they're putting into different cloud data repositories. In some cases, those cloud data repositories might be outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, like a Dropbox or something like that. And with Defender for Cloud Apps and its integration to Microsoft Purview, which is the compliance side of Microsoft 365, you know, you can make sure that that data is appropriately classified and labeled, regardless of where it's going, even into other cloud environments. So very, very powerful tool, and definitely, you know, something to look at as you guys really start trying to maximize the A5 suite. Now, I talked a bit about Purview there, so I'm just going to sort of touch on it briefly here. You know, it comes as part of that A5. It has a lot of integration back into Defender, and essentially there's 3 main components of it to be aware of. Data loss prevention, which is the capability of, hey, you know, someone's tried to send an email externally, for example, that has a whole bunch of student GPA information and other things in it. We want to block that because they weren't supposed to do that. Or information protection, that's where your sensitivity labeling comes in. And then insider risk management. So I had someone call me up the other week to tell me that their registrar had quit and they were worried that they had taken sensitive information with them that was IP belonging to the school, essentially. So in that kind of use case, insider risk management has policies to look for things like data theft by departing users, and it would actually alert based on that so that you could take action. These are the sort of the three pillars where you generally start inside of Microsoft Purview. And just to sort of take you to the end of the rainbow scenario, as I like to call it, because this is a journey, like I said, you can't go from A to Z overnight. In the end state, once you get all these different capabilities built out, you can get to the point where, let's imagine you've got the CFO, for example, and their account has been compromised by a threat actor who's looking to engage in a ransomware attack. The first thing the threat actor does is they start to exfiltrate data. The insider risk management tools see this and recognize that it's not normal activity for that person. So immediately their risk levels raised, and dynamically, adaptively, automatically, data loss prevention kicks in with different policies to stop the user from sending data to certain places. And then information protection maybe even removes their ability to even see the sensitive files that they had access to before. And then conditional access just completely blocks them from being able to access the tenant. Maybe the risk's that high. So it's a huge ecosystem of capabilities, a journey to kind of get there. But hopefully this shows you like how it can be that full platform to provide a really comprehensive approach to protect yourself from ransomware and other things. Now, just to top off the first 3/4, I guess, of today's webinar, a few different things here to see from a recent study that shows the sort of savings and such like that other EDUs have benefited from going to this licensing suite. So this was specific to like a K-12, and we'll send this out afterwards and kind of follow up with you guys so you can get a copy of these. But this came out of a Forrester study showing the improvement across all these different areas from going to A5. Now, as we're about to switch gears here and actually see some of this from Saman, I'll just leave you with some of these best practices on the screen here. Starting off with ASR rules that we talked about early on in audit mode. If you just turn those straight on to block mode, you're going to make a lot of people really mad. Controlled folder access is a very important ransomware feature that falls into that area as well. I see a lot of people avoid using it because it's a bit more difficult to set up. We've got a really great playbook for it and can help you get that going. Essentially, it stops the ransomware from being able to encrypt the core system folders inside of Windows. MFA, still a challenge for a lot of EDUs, but to this day, definitely the lowest hanging piece of fruit. There's new ways you can do MFA. We've got a thing called Entra Passkeys coming out soon at the start of next year. It's in preview right now. That might open up some new options to solve some of those MFA pain points that you're seeing. And then last couple of things on here. So endpoint data loss prevention, being able to see where data is being copied to and printed from locally on your workstations comes as part of the A5. Definitely make sure you take advantage of that. And finally, we talked about the cloud apps and being able to monitor the different apps being accessed. As soon as you enable Defender for Endpoint, with one flip switch, you can get full access to all of that data. So I highly recommend using that early on in your journey as well. So with that, Saman, do you want to make some of this kind of real for the folks here on the webinar so they can see a little bit of this in action with some of the time we've got left here?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Garrett. That was very awesome. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. So that was a great presentation. Garrett mentioned that whole Defender XDR umbrella. A lot of feature. It's a big suite of security solution, end-to-end from code to data. We talked about Defender for Office 365, which is Microsoft email and collaboration security platform. Also Defender for Endpoint, which is our endpoint detection and response EDR solution, pre and post breach capabilities, which is the very most essential part of your whole Defender. I call it our crown jewel of Defender XDR family. Also, Defender for Cloud Apps, which is our SaaS security solution, protects your basically your whole SaaS ecosystem from discovering them, onboarding them, monitoring them, and managing them. We also have Defender for Identity, which is to protect your on-prem identity infrastructure, any type of lateral movement attack, Kerberos attack, anything on premises, that's going to be Defender for Identity. Also on the cloud side of the identity, we have Entra ID identity protection, which protects your cloud side of the house, measuring the risk, including the risk in your decision process making, also all the Microsoft insight into a huge big pool of authentication every day, 75 trillion authentication Microsoft is monitoring dark web as well. So all that are pretty much in this one dashboard, right? You have one pane of glass monitoring your whole security ecosystem, not only from identity endpoint application perspective, but also from data security perspective. So meaning that if you have like DLP policies in place, if there's a DLP match, you see those incidents in your one instant queue, right? So with that, just real quick, we have 10 minutes. I have to be very quick, and there's a lot of things in this page. I'm going to start with this dashboard. One thing I usually start personally, and also in my demonstrations is from the security score, right? I love this score. Doesn't matter what Microsoft portal, either identity, Intune or Purview or security. This is a very good starting point. It kind of give me a very big picture, helicopter view of what's happening in my environment, right? And it actually breaks it down from all those pillars of zero trust, right? And based on this, I can kind of see where I'm standing today and what I need to do to improve, my score and improve my environment, right? It actually give me all this action I can just follow up. Very easy to use, right? So security score is very important. Always keep an eye on it. Follow the improvement action. Make sure you always keep improving your score. But other than that, very important to understand the integration between all this Defender that Gareth presented, because a good security solution is a suite of all this integration. You need to be able to correlate, or actually your solution need to be able to correlate all these different signals and telemetry it receives from different side of your infrastructure, with whether it's an email phishing, social engineering attack, which is usually how it starts, all the way to like data exfiltration, right? So understanding this big picture is very important, meaning that if you have this integration, as you look at the alerts in your security portal, you see, different alerts are coming from different detection sources. They're all talking, communicating to each other, correlating the signals. And with all those machine learning capabilities behind the scene, it can tell you if they're all kind of related into one attack story, right? It's all coming from one bad actor, right? So if you go to the incident queue, as a matter of fact, an incident in security portal is the story of the attack, right? So it tells you, basically put together all those telemetry and alerts and give you the one big picture of the whole attack. Very informative page, different parts in your whole attack. You can see the attack history. You can actually click on different stages. You can check into the alerts related to the attack. Also, all the assets involved, either users or mailboxes, application, even from your cloud resources. If you have, cloud infrastructure workload, they're all here, part of the attack. Investigation, evidences, and on the summary tab, you see some very good information. You can actually, understand what MITRE attack techniques they've used in this attack. Because one thing is preventing the attack, or if it happens, how to be able to contain and detect and investigate and remediate the attack. But also you need to be able to kind of learn from the attack, document, for educational purposes. Your SecOps team need always to kind of learn from the previous attack, right? A lot of information in the incident page. So basically, that's how your daily, kind of tasks start right from here, right? Alerts and security. Also, another great tool as part of A5 or A5 security is this advanced hunting, right? This is a very powerful tool using KQL language, so query language. It's what I call PowerShell for security. You can actually start scripting and investigating like sophisticated scenarios, right? Tier 3 scenarios, investigating your environment from different perspectives, from whether you're looking into like endpoint breaches or endpoint type of incidents, or email collaboration or identity, right? Or cloud applications. So very powerful tool, part of A5. Next part is if we look at the dashboard, again, everything is right here. You can actually see different sections of Defender XDR. On the endpoint side, you have the vulnerability management, very important capability as part of your A5 security or Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. You get the core capabilities. You can kind of monitor vulnerabilities and your third-party applications, remediate them, improve them. Also, one of the cool features on Defender is this device inventory. This discovery of devices is very helpful because it gives you not only your kind of enterprise endpoint, meaning server and workstation, but also kind of understanding of IoT or OT devices, enterprise IoT like printers, switches, firewalls. Also on managed devices, a big part of your whole environment is understanding how many unmanaged devices are on my network. So you kind of understand if to protect and basically prevent any unauthorized access to your resources. On the email collaboration, aka Defender for Office 365, you have this section of the dashboard. You get some great tools as part of A5 security or A5 or Defender for Office Plan 2, including the campaign view. Campaign view is a very powerful tool, kind of investigating if there's any campaign trend happening from email security perspective. You get this Explorer, which is, I believe this is the most go place based on what I understand from our customers. This is one dashboard. You can pretty much monitor everything, get the big picture, big view, and also, go deep down into an email investigation, take actions right from here, see if there's something you need to kind of zoom in into your email security perspective. Attack simulation training. One thing that Gareth mentioned in the presentation part was, your users are your basically last line of defense, right? Your human firewall. I love that term. Very important to educate users. This is a very powerful tool to kind of complement your whole security ecosystem, educating users by having like a regular awareness training, kind of them to learn, how to be more responsible and how to pay attention to details, not to click on every attachment or link in the email. Also on the cloud app side, Defender for Cloud Apps, which is our SaaS security, you get this very awesome, cloud app discovery or shadow IT discovery. Very important to understand what SaaS applications are being used in your network, right? That's the very first thing you want to, and based on researchers, on average, each user is using 120 plus SaaS applications, right? You've seen many users using, third-party SaaS like Box Account, DocuSign, you name it. It's a long list of them, right? You want to make sure not only you discover them, but you can also monitor and manage them, right? You can right from here, from this dashboard, you can block or allow access or sanction unsanctioned. That these are the terms we use to control the access. You can see the app score, right? If you're following a specific compliance or regulatory requirement, you can just see what app score it has, and based on your requirement, you can actually see if this is a safe application to use. And if it's a safe application, if you need to use that, then you're going to onboard the application and make sure you have full visibility into the whole app architecture, like the authentication behavior, like how many times they sign into the app, or if they're using or sharing confidential content within the application, right? If they use, like, for instance, like Box account, if they're sharing a confidential Excel file with social security numbers, you want to make sure you monitor that, you block it, right? And it's important thing is it integrates with your Microsoft Purview information protection, so it has full visibility and it scans all those files when people are trying to share that. Again, there's a lot in this dashboard. I just wanted to have like a very high level summary of everything, but I touched a little bit on that. But last thing is, again, very important to have one pane of glass and all this integration, because that's a very key thing to if you want to talk very high level, a good security solution is number one, you want to prevent every threat that is happening to your environment, right? Which is too good to be true. But if it happens, you want to make sure you have full automation, which is the benefit of A5 security or all the P2s. We have the automation, so they're all automatically remediating certain type of attack. And third one is you want to make sure they're fully integrated, so they can correlate all these signals and make sure if they're coming from one source of attack, if they're related. So it minimizes the amount of alerts and incidents you're dealing with, so you have a better understanding of the big picture. Very last thing, just one sentence, best practices. I saw one of them that shine, and it's the easiest one. That's the lowest hanging fruit, MFA, right? If you ask any cybersecurity, expert, what is one thing to do to eliminate the attack vector? It's going to be enabling your MFA. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Gareth.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks everyone. Really appreciate the time today. We did get at least one question in the Q&A. If anyone else has other questions, we're going to be following up with everyone with the slides after this anyway, and the recording as well. So yeah, just to say thank you very much for your time, and hope you got a lot of value from this. Let us know, if any questions come up afterwards. Appreciate everyone's time. Have a good rest of the day.